Flatirons Tuning. We're here in the shop, and for this episode of the Shop Chronicles, we're going to go into detail to what the heck happened to us at Super Lap Battle. If you were following kind of the build-up to us going out there, I'm sure like us, you were hoping that we were going to be able to have a good result, get some good laps in, find out what the car can do at Circuit of the Americas, you know, an amazing track, amazing facility, but that just was not in the cards. So we had overheating issues, and I want to bring you up to speed on what happened and why basically at this point we were kind of stumped. Before I dive into that, just want to say if you like what we're doing with the channel, if you like the content that we're putting out, please do like and subscribe to the channel. That helps us out a ton. And as always, the very best way to support us so we can keep coming back and making content for you is to head over to our website, flatironstuning.com. So check out the website, and please do like and subscribe to the channel. And heck, if you find this interesting or any of the stuff that we've done interesting or fun to watch, whatever, you know, share it, pass it on, help other people find this so that we can keep the channel growing. Okay, so some quick backstory just on the car, just to kind of set the stage for Super Lap Battle. We ran the car with this cooling configuration in Pikes Peak 2021 and had the best cooling result that we've had. We pretty much have overheated this car or had cooling issues with this car every year that we've run Pikes Peak except for 2021. Now the caveat there is that it did snow, so it was much colder than normal, and they shortened the course. So the Pikes Peak stopped at Devil's Playground, which left about the last quarter of the track, so we weren't basically racing the last 3 or 4 miles to the summit, which was typically where we've overheated before. So, but having that good result, we felt pretty comfortable with the cooling system. And as the year went on, after Pikes Peak in June, Scotty had his engine failure. And so because the car was in good shape and we had the good result, Scotty took us out to the NASA event at High Plains Raceway, and I think it was September. So the car had sat for 2 or 3 months. We didn't really, we went over the car, but we weren't really concerned about the cooling system because it had worked so well for us before. And out of High Plains, within a couple of laps, we started to see the temperatures come up, and so Scotty brought the car in, and we broke the cooling system. And that day, at the NASA event, I think Scotty went on track twice. Temperatures came up twice. We didn't overflow the overflow tank or anything like that, but just temps were coming up, and so we realized that there was an issue, and we just brought the car back to the shop. Now, knowing that we had hit this problem, we went through the car, we thoroughly went through the cooling system again, and Scotty took the car back to High Plains to shake it down again. He had to burp the car at the track again, but after doing so, the cooling system worked at High Plains on a pretty warm day, like 80, 85 degrees, the best that it has worked probably yet. I think the maximum cooling temperature that we saw in a 20-minute track section was about 180 degrees. So it's staying very cool. It was awesome. This is actually before we got the Marsh Powerhouse hood on the car even. It was really encouraging. So that was towards the end of the season, probably like maybe beginning of October. And then we went into the winter months. We started going through everything, and as we're getting ready for Super Lap Battle, at that point we figured that the takeaway that we had at that point was that, well, because we're using water as the coolant, we need to just really be diligent about monitoring it, burp the system before we take it to an event, because that's what had worked for Scotty at High Plains that day. And so our thinking was, you know, the closer to the actual event that we could burp the coolant so that we know that everything is solid, that there's no air in the system and so forth, the better. And so we got the car ready, we went through it. We wanted to go to the track, but it was below freezing, and like it just didn't work out. And so then we headed down to Super Lap Battle. Now on Friday for testing, we got there in the morning, and you know the plan was to burp the coolant, and so that's exactly what we did. We got the car put together, went through the cooling system, got ready, and sent Scott out on track. Now on Friday, he basically got a warm-up lap, one sort of hot lap, and then the car overheated about halfway around on the third lap, and that's when it came in. So as we started diagnosing everything, we'd filled up the overflow tank, put the no-spill funnel on the auxiliary tank, started adding the water in, and because we had taken the overflow bottle off because it was full, as we're filling everything back up, I realized that there was coolant coming out of the hose that would go into the overflow bottle. And basically put the overflow bottle back on and realized that as we're adding coolant to the no-spill funnel, it was going directly into the overflow, which seemed like it shouldn't be possible. Some quick troubleshooting, and basically what became obvious is that this radiator cap on the radiator had failed. It was not sealing. That's why water was going directly from the auxiliary tank into the overflow, because basically the only way you could do that is through the radiator cap. So we replaced the radiator cap, and at that point, so we've been using Mishimoto 2-bar radiator caps. We've had decent luck with them for a while, but we brought some backups, and then the concern was, well, could it be an issue, a fitment issue, whatever, with that cap on the radiator? And we decided to borrow 2 known good Subaru OEM caps in hopes that maybe if there was a fitment issue that would solve it, and so that we'd have better luck. So we broke the cooling system, put that on, and since got back out for a second time on Friday, and the car basically overheated about halfway around on its first hot lap. So 1 warm-up lap and then overheated in the first half of the hot lap. Brought the car back in. And so at that point, we're looking at all options. And you know, if you take the race car out of it, just having gone through any part of the cooling system, if you start having an overheat issue, as soon as you get on to an underload or on throttle, a lot of times it comes down to air in the cooling system. There's an air bubble stuck in the engine that you've got to get out to get the cooling system working properly. But it could also be a stuck thermostat. Was the thermostat not opening, and that's what was causing it? Or could it be head gaskets? We entertained all of those possibilities on Friday night. Viet and I drove all around Austin trying to find valve cover gaskets and head gaskets to see if we could replace those, which we could not. I was very surprised how little part support there was for Subarus in Austin, but we couldn't find any of that stuff. I should also mention that on Friday night, because we couldn't find any head gaskets, what we ended up doing was we drilled 2 holes in the thermostat. So the thought being, well, if the thermostat might be not opening, maybe we drill a couple holes to help water flow through the thermostat, help basically kind of keep help more of the cooler water from the radiator get into the engine more continuously. So we came back, put the car back together, put the caps on, broke the system, and we were still having some issues, even just kind of testing it in the pit area, like just doing some little brake boosts, stay on the brakes, get on the throttle. Without getting the coolant temps up, we were able to still see coolant moving into the overflow, which, given everything that we'd seen, we still thought it could just be down to a bubble in the engine. So we went, it was pretty late, we went back, got a little bit of sleep, came back on Saturday, the first day of Super Lap Battle. And one of the things that we decided to try on Saturday morning was to raise the front of the car, to basically make the high point of the system the top of the radiator instead of the auxiliary tank. So that's what we did. Jacked up the front of the engine, let the engine run, let the coolant burp as best we could, put the known good caps back onto it, and send the car out. And we had also discovered on Friday night that the water sprayers that we used at Pikes Peak were clogged and they were not spraying water. So we got those things working for Saturday morning, sent Scott out, and basically didn't improve the result at all. So the car went out, warm-up lap, and overheated about the first half of the hot lap again and came back. So at that point, we're really scratching our heads, and at that point, and I should have done this sooner, I pressure tested the 2 known good caps that we had borrowed. Turns out one of those caps was no good. The cap that we had on the auxiliary tank would go up to 15 psi, and then the needle would just drop. It wasn't holding any pressure. So that was not working, that was not doing us any favors, and that would have been as likely a cause of anything for the car to not be able to do a lap. So we were going through everything, and then things got really weird. So we're burping the cooling system, we have the nose spill funnel on the auxiliary tank, and the car is stone cold, and I'm squeezing the hoses to get the air bubbles out. Squeeze the top hose, getting air out, fine. Squeeze the bottom hose to get some of the air out, and I noticed a bubble came out, but then the level of coolant in the nose spill funnel went up. Squeeze it again, level in the nose spill funnel went up again. Had the guys come over and watch, squeeze it again, level went up again. Super weird. Still to this point, can't figure out how that's even possible, but that's what was happening. So at that point, without being able to do head gaskets, started to think that it was possible that we had some kind of restriction in the cooling system. Or the other thing we were entertaining is that the water pump might not be flowing enough, like there was some issue with the water pump that could be causing the issue, or that the thermostat was in fact not opening. All we could find in Austin on that day at the Subaru dealer was a new water pump and timing belt, so that's what we did. We put on a brand new water pump and timing belt to know that that was good. Tested more Mishimoto caps, put the Mishimoto caps on the car, prepped the system as best as we could, and that took us mostly to the end of the day on Saturday. So our feeling was, well, this should be the best, most functional cooling system that we could possibly have. So we sent Scott out again on Sunday morning, and unfortunately, as you now know, the same thing happened. Warm-up lap, and basically pretty much the first quarter of the hot lap, the car overheated again and came back to the pits. Caps were good. We had burped it to the best of our ability. Believe me, we spent more time probably burping the cooling system. That's pretty much what we did at COTA this year, is just burping the cooling system. And we knew that the water sprayers were working. And so now it's got to be something else. So back in the shop, car's on the lift. Our next plan of action, the engine's coming out. We're going to tear it down, remove the head gaskets, inspect them, the block, the cylinder heads. Go through everything, probably replace the head gaskets and probably the head studs. Go through everything with a fine-tooth comb as best as we can to make sure that everything is right, and then we've got to put it back together and shake it down to get ready for our next event, which is either going to be the Clifton Hill Climb or the Pikes Peak Hill Climb, one or the other. It just depends on when we can get the car back together and have a reasonable degree of certainty that the cooling system is functional again. The biggest takeaways from that whole weekend is, one, for us, we did not bring as many spares and parts and gaskets and stuff like that as we could have. And from now on, if we're going to make that kind of distance, travel that kind of distance, we're going to bring as many spares and everything as we possibly can, just so that we have the ability to fix as many possible problems that might crop up to keep the car running. The other takeaway I had is, if it's at all possible, never trust a used, known good part. Always test and verify that it is in fact good before you use it. Still kicking myself a little bit for not testing them right away, but if it comes off of a friend's car or a competitor's car that this is a good part, try it, and stuff happens. So that's where we're at. And man, if you listen to the podcast, Keith is still adamant that it's not head gaskets. It's still behaving arguably like there's an air pocket in the system. How there's an air pocket in the system, I don't know. But the final takeaway that we've had in discussing this on the long drive back is, if there's a best practice or best way to fill the cooling system, and on a Subaru the best way to do that is to use a vacuum, to pull a vacuum in the cooling system, or something like an airlift. So you're using the vacuum to pull the coolant into the system, which basically makes it impossible for there to be an air pocket. Then we should be doing that. So we need to find a way to do that here in the shop, or get to the point where we can do that in the shop, and then find a way to do that on track or out in the wild, so that if you have another cooling system issue, you can refill it with the best possible way and the best possible practice. So all that is where we're at, and that's what we're going to try and do. So we're going to tear this down at some point in the next couple weeks. We'll let you know what we find. We'll let you, show you pictures of the head gaskets and the heads and all that sort of stuff. And then hopefully we'll find a smoking gun, put it back together, get the cooling system working properly, shake it down, and then if there is any kind of positive to this, it's that we know a lot of stuff that it isn't, that didn't cause the issue. And hopefully we can get it resolved so that the next event we go to, we're going to have a really great result. So that's where we're at, and that's what happened to us. So thanks very much for watching. As always, thanks for your support. And until next time, stay tuned with Flat Earth 2.